Hey guys, and welcome to the lesson. Today let's have some fun with Amazon S3. We'll be writing a Lambda function that's triggered by a file upload to S3. Then our Lambda will read the contents of that file, an array of user objects, and save the data to DynamoDB. So this tutorial should be useful for anyone looking to know how to get S3, Lambda, and DynamoDB all working together in their serverless architecture. All right, let's do this. Alright, so I just want to give a brief introduction to Amazon S3 before we get started. So S3 is Amazon's all-purpose object storage service. It basically allows you to store any type and any amount of data. It's a highly scalable, highly durable system, and Amazon guarantees that your data is stored across multiple devices and across a minimum of 3 availability zones. So an availability zone you could kind of think of as a data center within a region. So even if one availability zone goes down, you're not going to lose your data. Amazon likes to refer to this as the 11 nines of durability, meaning 99.999999999%. In other words, if you store 10 million objects, you could expect to lose one of them over the course of 10,000 years. Not bad. And like many AWS services, you only pay for what you use, so S3 can be a highly cost-effective storage solution. Now this video is part 3 of the AWS Serverless tutorial series, so if you want more detail on AWS Lambda and DynamoDB, you might want to go and check out parts 1 and 2 first. Links in the description below. However, you will be able to complete this tutorial just fine even without watching those first 2. Alright, let's take a look at what we're going to be building. First, a JSON file containing a list of users will be uploaded to an S3 bucket. The S3 bucket will emit an event that will trigger our Lambda function to run. Lambda will retrieve the JSON file from S3 and proceed to add all of the users from the list to the users table in DynamoDB. Alright, let's get started. Okay, so let's go ahead and log into the AWS console. Now the first thing we want to do here is to create an execution role for our Lambda function. The purpose of this role is going to be to provide read and write permissions to S3 and also write permission to CloudWatch so that our Lambda function can output logs. So let's go ahead and click on IAM. And let's go ahead and click on Roles. And go ahead and click on Create Role. Okay, now let's select Lambda since this is an execution role for a Lambda function. Go ahead and click on Next. All right, now we want to select an AWS managed policy that will match the permissions that we need. So let's go ahead and search for AWS Lambda, and what we're looking for here is Lambda execute. Okay, so go ahead and put a check mark by that one, and we can take a quick look. Now if you go ahead and expand this section here, we can see that this role is providing log write access as well as read and write access to S3. So that should cover everything that we want to do right now. Go ahead and click on Next. All right, we're not going to add any tags today, so let's go ahead and click on Next Review. Now let's give this role a name. Okay, I'm going to say Lambda-S3-role, so short and descriptive. And go ahead and leave everything else as is, and let's click on Create Role. Okay, so there's our newly created role. Now the next thing we want to do is to create an actual S3 bucket so we have a place to upload our file to. Alright, so let's go ahead and expand the services dropdown, and if you don't see S3 on the side, just start to type it in here and it will go ahead and pop up for you. So click on S3. Alright, and once the S3 landing page loads, let's go ahead and click on Create Bucket. Alright, now the bucket name needs to be like a globally unique name, so let's try to come up with something that's not in use already. I'm going to say user data bucket 123. Okay. Go ahead and check the region to make sure it's set to the region that you want to work in, and let's click on Create. All right, great. So here's the bucket that we're going to be uploading our JSON file to that contains the user data. Now for that JSON file, I'm going to provide a link in the description of this video for a test file that you guys can download and use for this exercise. Or you can create your own file if you so choose to. So let's take a brief look at just what it looks like. I'm going to pop over to Visual Code here. So it's just users.json. It's an array of user objects, and each object has a unique ID, a first name property, and a last name property. So either you can, like I said, use the test file that I'm going to provide for this video, or you can just go ahead and create your own. Your choice. All right, so next up, let's go ahead and create our Lambda function. All right, so let's go ahead and navigate over to Lambda. So if we expand the services dropdown, you may see Lambda over to the side, or otherwise just start to type it in. All right. And let's navigate over to the Lambda homepage and click on Create Function. All right, just make sure that Author from Scratch is selected, and let's give our function a name. I'm going to say put user data from S3. Okay. Now let's make sure that the Node 8 runtime is selected. Choose an existing role, and let's go ahead and select the role that we set up previously, Lambda S3 role. Okay. And go ahead and click on Create Function. Okay, so the first thing we want to do here in our Lambda is to add a trigger for S3. So that way, once we upload our JSON file to the S3 bucket, S3 will emit an event, and Lambda will listen to that and be triggered based on that event. So if we scroll down, we're looking for the S3 configuration. So go ahead and click on S3. You'll see this little highlighted area appear. Configuration required, so let's just scroll down a bit and we can go ahead and configure our S3 trigger. All right, so you should see the bucket that we just created. You should see its name right here. And then under event type, so right now it's defaulted to all object create events. That means our Lambda will be triggered whether we upload a file or even if we delete a file. So we don't want that. Let's go ahead and change this, and let's select put. That way our Lambda function is only going to be triggered when we upload a file to S3. Okay, prefix, we can leave that blank. That is only if we want to restrict this trigger to certain prefixes, but that's not relevant here. We can enter a suffix, so let's enter .json. That means this trigger will only work for JSON files. Okay? And go ahead and click on Add. All right, great. So, and don't forget to click on Save as well. I almost forgot. Okay, now our trigger has been configured and added to our Lambda function. So let's go ahead and start coding our Lambda. All right, now sometimes, yeah, this is a little bit weird, but I don't see the actual Lambda function, so I'm going to just go ahead and refresh the page. I noticed that happening once before. So yeah, just refresh if you're not seeing the function code for some reason. All right, so the first thing I want to do here is to get rid of all this boilerplate code. We won't be needing that. All right, and now let's go ahead and bring in the AWS SDK. So I'm going to say const AWS equals require AWS SDK. Okay. Now the next thing I want to do is to instantiate an S3 service object that will let us fetch our file from the S3 bucket. So let's say const S3 equals new AWS.S3. Okay. Now, once our S3 event has been emitted and passed into our Lambda function via the event argument here, we'll be able to look at that event and extract the bucket name and the bucket key, which we'll need in order to retrieve our JSON file. Okay, so let's go ahead and do const name. Let's use a destructuring syntax here to extract the name. Okay, so we'll say event dot records of 0 dot S3 dot bucket. Okay, and this records of 0 dot S3, that's just standard syntax for if you look in the S3 documentation, you'll find how to retrieve the bucket name and the key from the event. All right. So we'll do something similar for key. Let's go ahead and copy and paste this line. Okay, so let's say key, and then we're going to change this to object. Okay, so that should give us the bucket name and the bucket key. Okay, now we'll just construct a little params object to hold the bucket name and the key. Okay, so let's say bucket, comma, and let's do key, just like that. All right. Now the next thing we want to do is make a call to S3 using our service object. So we'll say s3.getObject, pass in our params object, and that should give us back the JSON file that we uploaded. All right, so since we're using Node 8, notice that we're using async, so we'll be using async await for our HTTP request. All right, so let's do const data, and that will hold the file data coming back. So let's say await s3 dot get object. We'll pass in params, and we'll say dot promise. And the dot promise is basically a retrofit for Node 8, and what it'll do is it'll wrap the get object in a promise so that it can be used with async await. All right, so the next step is to capture the file contents in a variable. So let's say const users string, okay? And the reason I put string there is because the data coming back from the file will be in a buffer object, so we need to convert it to a string in order to read it. So let's do data.body.toString, just like that. All right. Now we need to convert it again to JSON in order to be able to iterate over it in our JavaScript code. So let's say users.json equals json.parse users string. All right. Now let's go ahead and console log what we have at this point just to make sure everything's working up until now. So let's just output a little string here. Let's say users ... and let's output the string actually. That'll be a lot easier or more useful to see in the logs rather than the JSON object. Oh, and the last thing I need to do, of course, is to wrap this in a try catch. All right, since we're using async await. So, okay, there's our try. We'll add a catch clause here with the error object, and we'll just go ahead and console log that error. Console log error. All right. Okay, that looks good so far. What is it not like here? Bucket is not defined. Oh, okay, this needs to be name, not bucket. You guys probably caught that earlier. But anyway, okay, I think we're looking good now. So let's go ahead and save this. All right, now what we're going to do is go ahead and upload our file and then check the CloudWatch logs and see if we're outputting the file contents here from our Lambda. All right, so let's, I'll tell you what, let's open up services. I'm going to go ahead and open S3 in a new tab just so I have both side by side. Okay, so go ahead and click into your bucket. You can just click on the name here. Now go ahead and click on the upload button and click on add files. Now you'll need to navigate to wherever your test file is, users.json. Now this is the file that I'm providing again in the description, or you've created it on your own. But either way, just make sure you navigate to where that file is saved on your file system. Go ahead and click open and go ahead and click on upload. All right, so you should see here that your users.json file has been uploaded to the S3 bucket. So let's go ahead and navigate back on over to Lambda and minimize this. So if we scroll up, we can get to the CloudWatch logs from Lambda directly. So if you click on the monitoring tab up at the top, now there's a button over here that says view logs in CloudWatch. So go ahead and click on that. Okay. And you should see one entry here, and you can look at the time, and yep, that's the current entry. It matches the current time, so go ahead and click on that. And we should see some output right here in one of these, so go ahead and expand that. And there's our file contents. So, all right, so our event triggering is working. We're able to upload our file to S3 and then read in the contents of that file in our Lambda function. And now the final task here will be to update our Lambda function so that it can then save that user data to our table in DynamoDB. All right, guys, so let's navigate on over to DynamoDB and create our users table. Now, I've already created my users table from the previous lesson, but I'll just set up another one so I can walk through the steps and show you guys real quick here. So go ahead and click on Create Table and give your table a name. I would say users. I'm just going to add a -2 to mine to differentiate. For primary key, let's just put ID and leave it set to string. Okay, and go ahead and click on Create. All right, that'll take a second or two for the table to be created. And then when that's done, we'll grab our Amazon resource name. Okay, so just make sure you're still on the Overview tab and go ahead and scroll all the way to the bottom and see where it says Amazon resource name. Just go ahead and copy the value here to your clipboard. There we go. Okay, so now we'll need to modify our Lambda execution role and give it write permissions for DynamoDB. So let's navigate back to IAM and click on roles. And let's find our Lambda execution role. It's this Lambda S3 role. So let's click into that and go ahead and click on Add Inline Policy. Okay, choose a service. Let's look for DynamoDB. Okay, and click on that when it pops up. Okay, so we're just going to add a specific action for write permissions. So let's go ahead and click on Add Actions. And let's type in Put Item into the search box. Okay, and Add. All right, now just scroll down a bit and let's expand the Resources section. Okay, and let's click on Add Amazon Resource Name. So we'll restrict access to our specific users table. Now here's where you'll go ahead and paste in the Amazon resource name that you copied earlier from DynamoDB. Okay, now if you're just setting up the users table for the first time, your table may be just users. Again, mine is users too, just because this is the second one I'm setting up. So then the rest should auto-populate, and go ahead and click on Add. Okay, and when you're done with that, go ahead and click on Review Policy. And let's give our policy a name. I'm going to say DynamoDB write policy. Okay, and finally go ahead and click on Create Policy. Okay, that looks good. Now our Lambda should have permissions to write to DynamoDB. So let's go ahead and navigate back on over to Lambda and modify our Lambda function so that it will add the user data to DynamoDB. All right, so let's head back over to Lambda. And let's open our put user data from S3 Lambda function. Okay, just scroll down a bit so you can see the code. So I think what we'll do is first we'll modify the Lambda function so that it puts the first entry, the first user entry in our data file. And then once we get that working, we'll modify it to loop through all of the entries and put all of the entries into the database. All right. So let's see. The first thing I want to do here, I'm going to go right here under our S3 service object, and I'm going to create a new service object for document client. Okay, so const document client. And what document client does, it's basically a service or interface object that lets us talk with DynamoDB. So we'll use the put method on document client in order to add our user to the database. All right, so I'm going to say new aws.dynamodb.document client. Okay. Now let's go down a little bit to our try block, and right underneath where we're logging our user data, let's begin to write the code to add our user to the table. So here's where we can write our code to actually add our user to DynamoDB. All right, so the first thing I want to do, I need to extract all of the properties from the user.json. So let's do ID, first name, and last name. Oops, these should be curly brackets. Okay. And so we've already parsed the JSON, so we just need to set this to user.json, like that. All right. Now what does it like here? Value never used. Okay, well that's going to change in a minute. So next thing, let's construct a params object that we can then pass into the put method that contains our properties. So, well, we've already got a param, so we're going to have to do a little bit of refactoring here. So let's change our first one to, well, let's say get object params, like that. Okay. So then let's copy that and just replace it here where we're passing that into S3. Let's also change our data because now we're going to have two data variables. So let's make this one S3 specific, S3 data, and update it here as well, S3 data. All right, so now down here we can say, let's just say put params, like that. All right, so the first thing we need is a table name. Now, just remember to set this to whatever name you gave the table in DynamoDB. So I'm going to say users2, but if you just have users, then go ahead and give it that name. Okay, and the next parameter is our item. Okay, so this will contain the item that we're actually passing into Dynamo that we'd like to persist into the database. So I'm going to say ID and set that to ID from above. This is coming from this part right here where we use destructuring syntax to pull out the ID from the JSON payload. All right, and then let's say first name and last name as well. Okay, I think that looks good for our params object. So now we can go ahead and call DynamoDB via the document client. So let's say const, let's say DynamoDB data. Well, you know what, let's be consistent here. Let's say put item data. All right. So let's say await document client dot put. Okay, then put params. Okay, and don't forget to promisify this. Promise. Okay, and well, let's just console log for now what we get back. Okay, just a quick look to make sure everything looks good here. What is it not like here? User, this should be users.json. Okay, so just fix that if you copied me exactly there. You guys probably saw that anyway as I was typing it in. Okay, I think that looks good so far, so let's go ahead and click on save and we'll test out what we have so far. All right, let's, I'm gonna go ahead and open S3 in a separate tab. Okay, so let's go into our user data bucket 123. I'm gonna just go ahead and delete the file that is still in here from last time. So go ahead and delete users.json, and I'm just gonna upload it again to trigger our Lambda. So click on upload, add files, navigate to users.json. Okay, upload. All right, so let's go back to Lambda. Okay, scroll to the top and click on the monitoring tab, and we can click on view logs in CloudWatch. Okay, and this looks like our latest entry, so just go ahead and click in here, and Let's see, sometimes you have to just kind of take a peek in a couple of these. Type error. Okay, what else do we have here? Okay, so it looks like there is something going on here. Module initialization error, type error. Probably something with our document client. Let's go back and take a look at that. Okay, so I'm going to click back on the configuration tab. And what did I do wrong here? Type error, document client. Document client. New AWS.dynamo. Aha. There's a typo right here. You guys may have seen that as I was doing it. Okay, so let's go ahead and save that. And hopefully that was the only issue. So let's go ahead and redo our test. All right, let's get back into IAM. Oh, I'm sorry. What am I doing here? S3, of course. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete this file again and re-upload it. Upload, add files, users.json, upload. All right, looks like I've got two CloudWatch tabs open already, so I'm just going to go over to one of them. I'm going to just refresh right here. There we go. So let's click on our latest entry. Okay, that looks better. Looks like there's another issue. Okay, we're troubleshooting today. Nothing wrong with that. One or more parameter values were invalid, missing the key ID in the item. Okay, so this is referring to the put item on our document client object. Let's go back and see what's going on here. So back to Lambda. All right. Let's see. ID. What does it not like about ID? Ah, got it. Okay. I forgot that we said we were only putting the first entry in the user's file. So it doesn't know what ID is or any of these properties for that matter because we're passing in an array of objects. So we need to zero in on the first object by adding an index 0 right here. Wonder if you guys saw that. You probably did. So sorry about that, but we need to run our test again. Anyway, that's just the nature of coding, right? Troubleshoot as you go and get through all the issues and finally get it working. So let's make sure we go ahead and save that. All right, so back over to S3, delete our file again, upload again, users.json. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to CloudWatch and refresh here. Oops, I need to go back one level, I think. Okay, there we go. So here's our latest entry from 740. Click into that. Okay, that looks promising. Oh, there's our full payload that we're logging. This looks good. No errors. All right, so let's pop on over to DynamoDB and just see if our entry has been added. All right. So services, again, I'm going to open this in a new tab. Right-click, open in new tab, DynamoDB. So tables from the left-hand menu, go ahead and click in the table that you are using. And once this area comes up, just go ahead and click on the Items tab. And there we go. Matt Hansen is the first user in my users.json. So, okay, that's great. Finally, I got it working. So that's good. We're reading in the first entry from the JSON file and adding the first entry to DynamoDB. So the last task left for us to do is to modify our Lambda to loop through all of those entries and put each one of them in turn into LambdaDB. So we'll do that next. Okay, so I'm going to head back over to Lambda and just going to increase my font size here, or my screen size a little bit. There we go. Okay. So I think the first thing I want to do here is to set up like a response object. So let's do status code, and we'll initialize it to 0. And let's do a response body, and we'll just set that to empty string for now. All right. Okay. Now let's scroll all the way down below our try catch block. All right, and we'll just put together a response object that we can return from our Lambda. Okay, so let's do status code is going to be equal to status code, and of course we'll reset this in our try catch. And let's do body equal to response body. Okay, so let's start with our try catch, and we can just get rid of our console log here. All right, so we'll set response body equal to, let's just say, error adding users. Okay, just a simple string error message there. And then we'll set our status code equal to 403. All right, I'm just going to copy and paste this in our try block just above that, and then I'll modify it. So let's say succeeded adding users, and let's just say 201. Okay. And what is it not like here? Response is assigned a value. Oh, okay, so we can fix this by just returning our response. Okay, semicolon. This one needs a semicolon too. Okay, I think we are good as far as our response object. All right, now, since we're using async await, now what we want to do here, we're dealing with an array of user objects, okay? And we want to iterate over that. And for each iteration, for each user object, we want to call our put item method to add that, or our document client put method to add each user to the database in turn. All right, so we can use promise all, and inside that we'll have our await document client. This line right here will basically put inside of our promise all inside of our map. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to head back over to Lambda and just going to increase my font size here, or my screen size a little bit. There we go. Okay, so I think the first thing I want to do here is to set up like a response object. So let's do status code, and we'll initialize it to 0. And let's do a response body, and we'll just set that to empty string for now. All right. Okay. Now let's scroll all the way down below our try catch block. All right, and we'll just put together a response object that we can return from our Lambda. Okay, so let's do status code is going to be equal to status code, and of course we'll reset this in our try catch. And let's do body equal to response body. Okay, so let's start with our try catch, and we can just get rid of our console log here. All right, so we'll set response body equal to, let's just say, error adding users. Okay, just a simple string error message there. And then we'll set our status code equal to 403. All right, I'm just going to copy and paste this in our try block just above that, and then I'll modify it. So let's say succeeded adding users, and let's just say 201. Okay. And what is it not like here? Response is assigned a value. Oh, okay, so we can fix this by just returning our response. Okay, semicolon. This one needs a semicolon too. Okay, I think we are good as far as our response object. All right, so we're basically dealing with an array of user objects, right? So the plan is going to be to use an array map function to iterate over that array, and then we'll do an async await to put each item in turn. Okay. Now we'll need a sort of a nested promise structure here. So we'll use promise all, since we have multiple REST calls that need to happen, that each one will return a promise. And then a promise all will also return one promise once all of the internal promises have resolved. So we'll kind of have a nested structure here. All right, so let's see what I want to do here. Let's start right below this console log statement here on line 21. And so we can do await promise all. Okay. Now inside promise all is where we'll map through our user.json array. Users.json, okay. .map. Oh, I can't type today. .map, okay. Now we'll have an async function inside of this map, okay. And we will, so now we're iterating through this array, and for each user object, okay, we'll call, first we have to extract the values, and then we'll call our document client put function. All right, so I want to take this line below where we're using the destructuring syntax and just paste that right here. Whoops, that's the wrong thing. Let me try that again. There we go. Now don't forget to get rid of this index pointer here. All right. In fact, we need to change this to refer to the single object, not the entire array, just like that. All right, so then obviously we can get rid of this line. Now let's copy paste our put params object just below that. All right. Fix the spacing a bit there. Now everything here can stay as is. And then just below our put params, we'll do our await document client. Oh, and I really can't type today. There we go. You know what? I'll just copy and paste this. That's what I should be doing. Here we go. It's much easier. Save some keystrokes. Okay, so everything still lines up there. Now let me get rid of some of this code here that we don't need anymore. All right. Okay, and I think that is all we need to do here. So again, we're doing promise all. Inside of that promise all, we're iterating over the user's JSON data. For each user, we're doing an async await document client put. Okay, and this is going to actually add each item to the database. All right, and we've got our response set up already, so let me just clean up the white space here a bit. And let's go ahead and save, and we can test this out. All right, so let's navigate back on over to S3. I'll go ahead and delete this file that we still have here from last time. Delete, upload, add files. I'll add the same file back, users.json. There we go, upload. We've done this a couple of times by now, so it's like second nature. All right, and this time I don't think we even need to check CloudWatch. Let's just go straight to DynamoDB. Okay, click into your table. For me, it's users 2. And go ahead and refresh the table. And there we go. Looks good. So all of our 20 users have been added to the table. Our Lambda function is working, and we are done for this lesson. All right, guys. Well, thanks for watching this tutorial, and I hope you found it useful. Hope you found it interesting. I'm going to leave a link in the description below to the completed source code for your reference. So feel free to check that out. And please consider subscribing to this channel. I'll be releasing videos on a regular basis on similar topics, cloud computing, JavaScript, and everything about software engineering. So thanks again for dropping by, and see you guys in the next video. Take care.